When I was 13, an old woman followed my little sister and me home with a knife. This happened a few years ago, when I was about 13 years old, living in the south of France. It's not the most horrific story you'll ever read, but it still disturbs me to this day. Every afternoon after school, I would take the bus to my little sister's elementary school to pick her up. She was 9 at the time. We lived in a small, affluent village outside the city, quiet, pretty, and known for being very safe. Nothing bad ever happened there. Our house was on the other side of town, built on a hill. To get home, we had to walk up to the top and then take a long, steep road going downhill. In winter, it gets dark early, and that road was almost completely unlit. Only one lamppost at the top and then pure darkness. That day felt completely normal. My sister and I were laughing and chatting like we always did. We had taken this path for years, so there was no fear at all. When we reached the top of the hill and started walking down, something suddenly felt wrong. I can't explain it properly, but I had this overwhelming sense of unease, like my body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. Instinctively, I turned around. That's when I saw her. An old woman was walking behind us. I knew almost everyone in that neighborhood, and I had never seen her before. What immediately struck me was how fast she was walking, far too fast for someone her age. I was absolutely certain no one had been behind us before. I always paid attention to our surroundings because my sister was so young. When she noticed me looking at her, she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was unsettling. Something about it made my stomach drop. I'd met hundreds of elderly people in that village, but I had never felt this kind of fear before. I didn't say anything to my sister. I just kept walking, trying to act normal. At that point, our house was only about 300 meters away. Suddenly, without explaining anything, I said to her, "Run." She looked confused, but trusted me, and we both started sprinting. I glanced behind us, and that's when my blood ran cold. The woman was no longer just walking, she was almost running, and she was holding something in her hand, a knife. I don't even remember thinking. I just moved. I pulled out my keys, opened the gate to our house, shoved my sister inside, and slammed it shut behind us. I told my sister to go into the house immediately while I stayed outside for a moment, shaking, trying to make sure the woman hadn't followed us in. That's when I saw it, the shadow of 2 feet under the gate. She was standing there. I knew she couldn't get in. The fence was about 3 meters high, but I was absolutely terrified. There was a stranger with a knife who had followed 2 children all the way home. After what felt like forever, but was probably 2 minutes, the feet disappeared. She left. I never saw her again. Years later, we moved to the United States. I never told my sister the truth about why we ran that day. She still doesn't know. But I know one thing for sure. If I hadn't trusted that feeling, if I hadn't listened to my instincts, this story could have ended very differently. Now, let's move to the next Reddit story. Psychopath X and her family of flying monkeys. This was back in 2022. But I still think about it sometimes. I was a 24-year-old man, naive, fighting with my father. I was still fighting a mental health battle, and had no idea just how messed up I still was. My whole life, I was groomed to just take over the house when he dies, and was put down about anything else I wanted to do. Anything else besides the grind was unnecessary. No getting a degree, or building a career. No extracurriculars in school or clubs. Being 70, you'd think he'd have some wisdom from a life well lived. Lessons to be learned. But he was just an aggressive liberal who thought everyone but him was stupid. Would make friends out of Republicans just so he could get high and bully them. Would assume I didn't know how to do something if he hadn't taught me, and called me a pussy if I ever defended myself. We were fighting a lot lately, and I just wanted to move out and go be independent. I've been working factory jobs for years and could afford it. Eventually I got a message from this girl I knew. She was the first person I'd ever dated. I knew her for 12 years in total, but we disconnected for 8 of them. She said she was in the area and wanted to reconnect. She had just gotten out of a toxic relationship. I wasn't aware of just how bad her life was yet. We spent time together. My father hated her. I had problems with her family a lot. Jumped by her brother in high school at times and there was a feud. But she moved out early on and was always the reasonable, empathetic one. She seemed okay. There's times I look back now and cringe how I thought I knew how the world worked. My father hated her and refused to let her be around me, but refused to elaborate what red flags he was seeing. The because I said so personality. I'm still confident that if he had explained it to me, I might have at least listened. But I was just so over his toxicity. Treating me like I was retarded. I went to stay with her and her family for a few days. After the back and forth over text, he eventually said he wants me gone. So I moved in with them. They wasted no time convincing me that he was manipulative and controlling, that he was using me, that my dog, who showed signs of trauma since I got him from the puppy mill, was probably being abused by him. They seemed so nice and welcoming, so supportive. It was her adoptive mother, her stepfather, her stepbrother, and her bio father was still in the picture. I now have no idea who that other family was to her. They told me odd things that other family members would confirm. Her bio father was an FBI agent. He was a compulsive liar is what he was, and her family was all his flying monkeys. They convinced me they had ties to organized crime and had multiple people confirm it too. I am truly ashamed how I let that one go. The stepfather was a friend of the bio father and had this Tony Soprano air about him sometimes. These were red flags galore, and I acknowledged them. But my hands were tied and the door was closed behind me. This felt like my life now. GF would, over the course of 4 months, start fights between me and the mother. Make up things she would do. Make up things I would do. Try to start things every chance she'd get. She made it seem like it was me and her against them. I was close with the stepdad. He seemed real enough. Cried in my arms when his uncle died. Called me his son. Treated me like one. But things were stressed. Toxic ex, who was his actual son, came back into the picture, and I hated that. I had to coexist. She was obviously cheating, and when I went to leave, they told me she was pregnant and showed me the test. Told me that if I walked away, I'd get my jaw broken. Then put into concrete shoes and dropped in the canal. I was having a hard time getting a job, and the bio father pretended to pull some strings, and suddenly I got accepted, packing ice cream in the distribution center of a popular gas station. The money was good, but mentally I was absent. I lasted a month. But I was sitting in the car out front every morning, and sometimes I would laugh, then scream and cry, then it felt like I was full of sand. I lost the job because I was getting clumsy and dropped an iron magnet that cost $10K and broke it. After I got fired, I was fully convinced I would be murdered by the bio father, as I was told by the family I would be. Eventually the ex ran off to be with her ex, and I sat down and talked with the family. We all compared notes about what happened and clicked everything together, and they seemingly turned against her for the monumental chaos she brought. She pushed my mental health so much that they almost convinced me to admit myself into the psych ward. They would let me snap, then act like I'm abusive. They disowned her and apologized for everything. Let me stay for a while. I was now an alcoholic, and everything just hurt. Getting blackout drunk every night. When I did leave and go back to my father's, it was a few months before the adoptive mother called me screaming about how I'm saying I slept with her apparently, and not to worry about how she heard about it. Turns out the ex has been calling them and saying lies about me, and they never disowned her. I had done a lot of research into manipulation and dark psychology by now. I know what they did to me. I blocked them all and changed my numbers and profiles. I have 27 profiles for the same 3 people blocked on Facebook. And I still to this day see faces in the crowd that look familiar and forget how to break. After a year of drinking to die, I quit cold turkey, got a better job, got my credit score up to 678, and paid off most of my debt. The ex used to lie about liking my singing, but now I don't need validation on it. She had a baby shortly after leaving, and I to this day don't know if it's mine or not. I refuse to find out because I know the lengths she'd go to get money with no contact. I omitted so many more things they did, and I know now that if they were in organized crime and in the FBI, they wouldn't have told me about it. I still look over my shoulder because they know where I live. I live with my father again. We still fighting relentlessly, but I understand him more. To the inhuman nightmare that showed me how easy I was to take advantage of. Let's never meet again. Moving to the next Reddit story. Did I come in contact with an egomaniac therapist? Client here. Not sure where to write or post this at, but anyway, it all started back in August of this year, 2025. I recently got discharged from a mental hospital due to alcohol abuse, and I met one of the therapists there, and he came across very charming and nice. He was compassionate and seemed to understand everything about me. Off to a good start, yeah? I like to believe it was. In there, he helped me with my situation, and what would be a good plan for my discharge. It went through well and perfectly for me thanks to him. Honestly felt very lucky and grateful at the time. I still am thinking back at it. Out from the hospital, he was a licensed therapist for his own LPCA, and I signed on almost immediately because I thought it would be beneficial for me to get the help I needed, and because he was first so excited and eager for me to sign on with him. In the next couple of weeks we started sessions, and it went perfectly well. Maybe too well. In the first 4 sessions we got along perfectly, and were a perfect fit, most likely due to our relationship in the hospital. He seemed too excited to see me every night we would have a session, and even wanted to see me at his office he worked out of. So September comes, and we plan to meet that night for an 8 p.m. session, and it very well. He even bought me gifts, so to speak, and asked me the usual questions, if I was taking my prescribed medications such as naltrexone for alcohol cravings and such. The session then ended, and this was during the time my stepmother had a fall and was in the hospital. He offered to drive me and take me to see her, and he did. It was a very short drive, we just made small talk, still being the charismatic guy I thought it knew. After that night is when everything changed. Now going back to his informed consent, which is given before you start therapy with a therapist, it listed that everything you would want to hear. Maybe a too good to be true kind of thing. Saying that he was available for calls and his personal number, etc., which he gave me at the hospital. After that night at which he dropped me off at the hospital to see my mother is when it changed drastically. The following week goes by, and I wanted a session, which he is the one that reaches out first every week for when he is available due to scheduling time for his sessions. Anyways, by the end of the week, I don't hear anything. I emailed him, and 2 days go by and hear nothing. Then came the reply he was available for a session, but then told me that a scheduling manager stepped in and took over everything, including his sessions and when he could meet. On that following Saturday we planned to meet, and it didn't go so well. I could tell he was very put off by being there, and didn't get much out of it by the end of the session like it was, and how we originally planned in the beginning. He would say things like, "I'll never give up on you," and so on. Was that a red flag from the start? He then immediately said he would not offer calls or texts anymore for me personally, because he thought I was too much and not suitable for my needs, even though he knew almost everything about me from the start. I don't know about you, but that seems like a narcissist, or some love bombing going on there. Before this I had called him, and he immediately yelled at me and said to call 988 or something like that, which he wouldn't do in the beginning, which was very confusing and frustrating for me. I then planned in my head to meet with him one last time and see if anything has changed with him. The next session comes around, and turns out he planned an even shorter 30-minute session, which what happened to the full hour and half sessions we would have? That immediately told me to stop attending and to cut off this 20-year experienced professional therapist, which he has in his bio on Therapy Den, etc. So the session starts, and it still feels very one-sided, like in the previous, and I can pick up when someone's energy feels different, and his most definitely did. Still feeling cut off, and like I was doing everything wrong. He then blamed me for him yelling and having to call him, which wouldn't happen before. I don't think I did anything to set him off like that. After that session, which I knew was going to be my last on which I would go back to him, I felt immediately guilt and frustrated, even a bit sad, which I should have because of the relationship and rapport we built. During the sessions he promised to keep checking in on me and nothing will change, but he never did. A few months go by and now it's December, almost New Year, and I still have heard nothing from him, which I'm not surprised one bit going by how things ended in the last session. As of right now, I feel almost completely over this, and thankfully haven't had any reasons to go back to therapy, but needed to vent about this. I have so much rage against this person, and there's little I can do. Just wanted to see if anyone has gone through what I did with a therapist. I doubt if I put his name out there his license will be taken away, but I'm glad I left and decided I was worthy of a good, more professional therapist if I was to seek one out in the future. So can anyone in here clarify if I came across an ego-driven narcissist using his therapist license for abuse, or just a shitty, horrid therapist that should know better on how to treat clients? To the therapist that tried to drain and manipulate me, let's not meet again. Let's move into the next Reddit story. Watcher in the Woods. This is possibly the weirdest encounter I've ever had. It happened after I dropped a friend off after a late night of films at my flat. The route to and from her home back to mine was straightforward. However, on this evening, there were roadworks, cutting off nearly all the routes back to my home. I must have circled the only open roundabout about 10 times before deciding to take an exit that I knew eventually connected to my town. This exit went through an isolated and rural area, which meant my phone's network and data stopped working. I'd grown up not far from there, and had driven through it before during the day, so felt up to the task. This area was home to a large expanse of woodlands. I was aware these woods had developed a reputation for being dangerous after dark, initially due to drug deals, but in the last few years, due to a series of stabbings and rapes that had gone unresolved. They're still unsolved, I think. They're not the kind of woods anyone could or would want to camp overnight, or spend time in generally. I wasn't quite sure if I had a sharp turn or exit incoming, and so I drove very slowly down the road that ran alongside the woods. I'd only been going for about a minute until something clanged against my car. I didn't hit or drive over something, no. Something struck my car while it was moving. I stopped the car immediately and pulled over to the side of the road. I debated getting out to check the damage but chickened out. It was past 2 a.m., these were some dense woods, and I liked horror movies too much to be so silly. Staying inside the car, I adjusted the side mirrors to check the damage, and luckily had parked under street lights so could see fairly well. For my insurance, I needed to know what damage there was and potentially take a picture. Oddly, there was a screwdriver on the ground a few feet behind my car, right where I'd heard the clang, sat out in the middle of the road. I didn't have time to take a photo, because something caught my eye on the other side of the road in the woods. The streetlights on the other side of the road lit up a few feet into the woods, and under that yellow light, something had moved. I'm not sure if he moved or turned around, but that's when I first noticed him. In the woods, just a foot or so back from the road, was a man. I could see his details in the streetlight, and remember it so clearly because it was so incongruous to see another person at that time of night in such a rural and isolated place. He had his back to me. He was mid-height, wore a black leather jacket, and dark blue jeans. From the skin exposed, not that there was a lot, I noticed that he had pale white skin and reddish hair. He was stood still and very upright. His hands were by his side, unclenching and clenching, but he kept his back to me the entire time. His head was positioned like he was looking straight ahead into the woods, but it just looked pitch black around him from where I was sat. There were no other cars parked or even driving by on this road. Besides this man and me in my car, the road and the rest of woods looked empty. Before he could turn around or potentially throw anything else, I sped out of there, side mirrors all askew. When I checked my car in the morning, I did have a new scratch in the paintwork, as well as a slow leak in that tire, but frankly that'd been the last thing on my mind when I got home that night. I wonder what would have happened if I'd got out my car to examine what the damage was. I can't rationalize why anyone would be standing out in those woods at gone 2 a.m. With his back to me, it all felt very Blair Witch Project. TLDR, to the random stranger who probably threw a screwdriver at my car and turned your back so I wouldn't see your face, let's not meet again. Ever. Moving to the next one. We almost watched our hostel roommate jump from a 5th-floor window. This happened in Berlin in 2022, first night of our trip, and I still think about it sometimes. We stayed at a hostel near Hermannplatz. The Russia-Ukraine war had just started. Berlin was full of refugees arriving by train. That becomes important later. We were 3 friends, 2 guys and 1 girl. The room was for 4 people with a private bathroom. When we checked in, the room was empty, so we assumed no one else was coming. We went out for beers, came back late, still empty. We thought, great, we got lucky. The room was on the 5th floor, and the window opened all the way. No safety lock, nothing. 2 bunk beds, one right next to the window wall, the other across the room. There was a chair and a small desk directly in front of the window. Late at night, the door suddenly opens and a guy walks in. He was from Kharkiv, Ukrainian or maybe pro-Russian Ukrainian. It was hard to tell after our brief discussion. He immediately felt off. Nervous, stressed, talking a lot. We chatted in English. At first we thought he was just anxious or tired. Time passes, it is already around 3 a.m. My friends fall asleep, but I am still awake talking to him. He is sitting on the chair right in front of the window. Eventually I tell him, politely, that we plan to go to museums early, and that it would be good to sleep or at least keep it quiet. He says okay. I turn off the lights and lie down. He goes to the bathroom. A bit later I hear weird knocking sounds. Soft at first, then louder. Then one really loud bang and silence. I get worried and walk to the bathroom door, which he left slightly open. I see him on the floor next to a small toiletry bag. He says yes and tells me to leave him alone. I go back to bed, but now I am fully anxious. He comes out of the bathroom and suddenly starts doing exercises. Stretching, push-ups, then sprinting inside the room. Then he runs out, and I hear him running up and down the hostel hallway. At this point, I am just staring at the ceiling like, what the hell is happening? He comes back and says he is hot, opens the window. It was April, not freezing, but still. Then I watch him take a running start from the door toward the window. One step on the chair, second on the desk, and suddenly he is completely outside, standing on the window ledge, holding the frame with both hands. I panic, but I do not scream. I was terrified that if I startled him, he would fall. I slowly walk toward him and calmly tell him to get down. He calmly tells me he has it under control. I try to touch him and he says, if you touch me, I will fall. So I step back and just keep talking to him. Somehow he climbs back inside. The second he does, I close the window and tell him how dangerous that was and that he cannot do that again. He agrees. I do not sleep. A few minutes later, he opens the window again and does the exact same thing. This time I lose it and shout, "Don't do this." My friends wake up in shock. It is around 4 a.m. Our female friend, who had a direct view from her bed, is completely frozen and cannot even speak. My other friend stays calm and helps me to talk him down again. We talk in our own language so he cannot understand, and agree we need to inform reception. Meanwhile, he apologizes, says he will not do it again, asks us to leave him alone. We hesitate because he is clearly going through something and is probably a refugee. We stupidly give him one more chance. He goes back to the window. This time he says he does it for the adrenaline. That is when we are done. I stay near the window while my friend quietly goes to reception. He texts us to come down. We leave the guy alone in the room and go downstairs. The police are called. Reception literally gives us beers to calm us down. The police arrive, go upstairs, and find him sleeping. They come back down and tell us he is asleep. We insist that once he wakes up, he will do it again. We show them photos and short videos I had taken. That is when they finally take it seriously. They take our statements, wake him up, and take him away. We think it is over. The hostel gives us free breakfast for the next days. Cool. Except his stuff is still in the room. Backpack and toiletry bag. I do something stupid and open the toiletry bag. Inside is some kind of drug, white paste and a syringe without a needle. We should have told reception immediately, but we were exhausted and just wanted to sleep. Next morning we go to breakfast early. We plan to go straight to museums. I had left my thick jacket in the room, thinking it would not be cold. It was cold. So I go back alone to grab it. I open the door. He is back. Same guy, same window, this time wearing his backpack. Inside the backpack, stuffed in aggressively, are my flip-flops that I had left outside my locker. I do not say a word. I grab my flip-flops and walk straight out. I run to reception where my friends are already waiting. We tell them he is back. Turns out the police never took his room key. He was released and came back to get his things. We went to the museums and finished the trip without anything else happening. I do not remember his name, and honestly, I would not be surprised if he is not alive anymore. So guys, what did you think? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.